Floyd, tell me your idea of the best run track in the country.
Oh, that's a very, very tricky one. On different levels, and they change. I mean, one of my favourite tracks, and there's always been my favourite tracks, is Yarmouth. I like everything about Yarmouth. It's a family-run track. The people, the management, Simon and Justin are third generation running the place. I love it that they have a lot of small owner trainers that do the dogs themselves. It's not too big. It's got a nice restaurant. It's very personable. That would kind of be one of my optimums. Having said that, I think it's great what Ian Smythe has done at his 4 tracks, and certainly most of the stories the most sort of plaudits coming in these days are for Monmore. But all his tracks, I mean, I love it what they've done with the owners bar at Hove, the fact they've built the new grandstand at Romford, and even Crayford. You know, they've done a lot. They've massively reduced the injury rates. I think that's good. I like Henlow because it's my local track. It's very much like a flapping track in many ways, but in a good way. It's the friendliest track you'll ever come to. So yeah, I've got a mixture. You know, I've got a mixture.
The Derby for 2020 at least will be at Nottingham. What do you make of that as a Derby venue? Nottingham
scores a lot of points in terms of it's a very good running circuit. We know that the trainers, quite a few trainers, have an issue with the starting traps for the Derby. Supposedly the ping boxes 3 and 4 and that kind of thing. Having said that, you know, we ran a study on the site looking at the Irish Derby, and they had their own issues in terms of, I think, 1, 5 and 6 being having by far the greater number of winners. If I was the Nottingham management, and God forbid anybody tell them how to run their track, I would certainly at least try and take away that issue, because it has become so major with the starting traps that they kind of can't win, even if it isn't a thing people will assume it to be. I think generally they will accept. I think Nathan and Rachel will accept that it's not a great viewing stadium, but to a certain extent you can't have that anymore. You know, you cannot build a perfect venue for what's going to be a few hundred people coming to your average meeting and say, well, once a year we're going to try and get 5,000 people in the place. You can't justify it. We're down now from into single-sided stadia. When I grew up, most of them, certainly the big ones, were all double-sided stadia, and that's not going to come back. We're not going to get another 12,000 people into Walthamstow or a Walthamstow type stadium, which, if I can remember, back for a Grand Prix final night. So
we don't know where the Derby will go as of 2021. Certainly one track that will hope to make a bid for it is Towcester. You reported on that just recently under Kevin Boothby. How excited are you about Towcester?
I'm very excited, and I'm very excited for the industry. Given that we've talked about you know, how the industry's gone betting wise, the fact that we probably only need 12 tracks, or from a commercial perspective we need 12 tracks. Personally, I wish there was still 30 in terms of giving people opportunities to train dogs, because you're not going to be travelling huge distances to train. You know, you live in the West Country, unless you're within striking distance of Poole, you're not going to train greyhound. You're not going to go greyhound racing. So I would love to see the more tracks, but realistically, we're only got a set number that we can sustain, and we need something as a pinnacle. We need something that can put on those big meetings, that can take 5,000 people. That is at its best. It's as good a facility as you can remember. I mean, as I said, I worked at White City, but by the time White City closed, it was just a big concrete barn. It was no longer acceptable for closed in the 80s. It was a stadium for 60,000 people back in the 30s and the 40s. Towcester is very much a modern stadium, and I think we're very, very lucky to have it.
Absolutely, and you believe in it, don't you? I mean, I believe that Kevin Boothby is looking at it as a much more well-rounded business, and he will make a success of it, won't he?
I think so. I mean, I sat with the people who's employing, and I love it that they're not greyhound people. They're young and enthusiastic, and but you have to be able to say, you know, greyhound racing is only a small percentage of what we do, because nobody's going to make a fortune out of greyhound racing unless they have their large numbers of bookmaker type meetings, and we don't want that. You know, it's kind of a bread and butter kind of service. We want some cream on the cake, and that's what Towcester can provide. So you have to look beyond greyhounds. I've looked at the ideas they've got, and there was just so much room there. I don't know how many times I've been to Towcester prior to, but certainly now it's closed and wandering around and access to everywhere in the stadium, you realise what a massive stadium it is, how well equipped it is. And I mean, for an example, Kevin is talking about putting up a marquee, which would be behind the original sort of 480, behind the grandstand near the 480 end, start of the 480s. And there was a huge area of land there that you could just drop a marquee in there. Again, a purpose-built modern marquee, weatherproofed, etc. That you can do that, and you could have people in there. You could have 600 people in there and still run a greyhound meeting, and they wouldn't even affect each other. And I think that's exciting to see the site from the far side where the horses, the far end of the horse race course, and look back up the hill and see exactly how much land is there. You have no idea, looking from the grandstand, how big an area that is. You know, you get a huge crowd in there for so many different types of events, and it's interesting. It's kind of, I found it quite infectious talking and listening to these guys who are out there now selling these events, just how I'd say easy it is for them. That wouldn't be fair, but certainly the enthusiasm and the excitement of how many different events that they could put on there, how many of the things that at the moment might be going to Nebworth, or they might be going to Milton Keynes Bowl, or they might be going to these other places, and you think, why the hell can't Towcester do them? Because I've been to most of those other places, and I think Towcester is a more impressive venue than any of them.
Exciting times for them.
Yeah.
Let's fantasise for a moment and put you in as Managing Director of the GBGB.
Yeah.
What do you do? How do we get the glory days back? Can we get the glory days back?
As I said, I don't think in terms of massive crowds and things, because I don't think that's feasible. I mean, yes, you get big crowds for Premier League football. You will get crowds. You don't get crowds now for cricket unless you maybe putting on a 2020 game. I don't. So on that side of things, I don't think those days are ever coming back. Also, the other thing that people tend not to think about is the greyhound racing model is built on many races a week. We see that when, for example, Boxing Day meetings, you can attract a huge crowd. Somewhere like Romford was ticket only and could have sold out weeks and weeks before on ticket only for those one-off events. So I think we can do that at Towcester. I don't think there are many other tracks that could even take those volume of people without it starting to get awkward. I think we concentrate at the weekends, because I think we're a Friday and Saturday society now. That's when the younger people want to go out, and so the younger people, I'm talking out to the 30s and 40s, that's when they want to go out. They don't want to go out midweek. Travelling is much more difficult than certainly 20 years ago. But if we can put these events on and we can make the money available, generate the money, as in the way Towcester's looking to do it, so that I can imagine Saturday night at Towcester could be amazing. I could easily imagine them getting 2,000 or 3,000 in on a Saturday night. Great atmosphere. The one thing that I've spoken quite a bit to Kevin about, I'm very keen, or I say very keen, my vision is that the future of greyhound racing is about the tracks controlling their own content. And much of that will involve things like at Towcester, controlling their own tote, betting into their tote from within the stadium and also from outside the stadium, controlling their own pictures. The longer things go on and the longer time goes on, content becomes king, and if we're looking at a proliferation of media providers, we're looking at super fast broadband, we're looking at smart TVs and Amazon TV and Google TV and Netflix, and there are going to be more and more of those. At some stage, I think what Towcester has, and not just Towcester, but Towcester, since we're talking about Towcester, it fits into a model that will work with some of those channels to provide content, because there's going to be a proliferation of channels and not enough content.
I'm going to wrap up in just a moment, but a couple of things to finish on. I wanted to give you a sort of a pat on the back, because you are one of the few, I would say, Greyhound commentators who actually has taken a retired Greyhound home.
Yeah.
You have one at home yourself. She ran at Towcester, didn't she?
She ran at Towcester, yeah. She won a few opens. She was kind of minor open class. Her name was Ribble Rush, and she was bred by Ian Greaves. And we've been talking about getting one for a while, and I spoke to Mark one day and said, by the way, have you got any that you're looking to rehome? He said, well, he said, there's a little bitch here I absolutely love. He said, but I think he said, you've got 3 at home already. He said, and if I turn up with her, the missus is going to go berserk. Sarah just will not be impressed. So I said, right, well, we'll take her. And we took her on and didn't quite realise what we were taking on, because I think he sold me one there, really, because she's an absolute madam. She completely runs the place. So I think he did a crafting on me, to be honest.
Good, she's got you under her paw.
Very much.
And just finally, from one sort of bit part journalist to a proper professional journalist, I just wanted to ask you, in a political industry like we work in, how hard do you find it at times with your opinions to sort of bite your tongue and toe the line? And you do have to do that to an extent.
I do. I mean, I get irritated because people will say, if someone doesn't agree with something I've written, and this particularly comes from the Greyhound scene people, oh, well, you're only saying that because you take advertising from various people. And trust me, various people have dumped me for advertising on numerous occasions and continue to do so. But you can't be, as a journalist, if you're going to have any integrity, and if you're going to get any followers or any readers, you can't just please everybody all the time. And I don't think there's anybody in the industry I probably haven't upset at some stage or another. But providing that you do it with integrity, I will always say, if I have to phone somebody in a difficult situation, albeit a track, I will say, listen, I've got to talk about this. But I will always give you an opportunity to defend yourself, because there is very seldom a black and white argument. So often I've got dragged into things, and you take the first phone call and you think, oh, that's absolutely disgraceful. By the time you've heard the other side, you can say, do you know what? It isn't quite as it was explained. There's still a story there. There is still something that I've got to talk about. But if you're not prepared to do that, don't be a journalist. We're not there to be liked. I'm not there to be liked. I mean, I said I spent 3 years as a policeman, so I'm kind of used to not irritating, or to irritating people. But we had a discussion earlier on, and I said my one kind of golden rule is, if I irritate the people, or if I annoy or upset the people who I respect, then I kind of have another look at it. But if they're people who've just got chips on their shoulders, or have got some kind of complex, or their mum didn't love them enough, or they got dropped on their head, then they can pretty much do one, to be honest.
And this interview will be all over Greyhound scene as we speak.
Oh, I do hope so.
So do I. Listen, it's been a pleasure, Floyd, and you're so knowledgeable on the sport. I really appreciate you giving us your time today, so thank you.
No problem.